John Gill, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2. Reading first from the King James Bible. Quote, "But even after that we had suffered before, and were shamefully entreated, as ye know, at Philippi. We were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention." Unquote. John Gill, quote, "But even after that we had suffered before. Before they came to Thessalonica, which they would not have done, had their ministry been a light and empty one in itself, and unprofitable to others, and especially had this been the case, they never have rashly engaged in it again, and exposed themselves to fresh sufferings and dangers as they did, and were shamefully entreated, as ye know, at Philippi, being beaten with many stripes, and put into prison, and their feet made fast in the stocks, at the instigation of the masters of the damsel. They had a spirit of divination cast out, by whom they made much gain, and which Paul depossessed." See Acts chapter 16, verse 16. "We were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention, and which still made it more manifestly appear that the errand they came upon was a matter of importancy, and that they did not proceed in a slight foundation. What they spoke was the gospel, salvation by Christ and not by the works of the law, the pure gospel, not a mixed one, free from the mixture of all human doctrines and inventions of men, without any alterations and inconsistency, the whole of the gospel, not a part of it. They declared the whole counsel of God, and kept back nothing that might be profitable, and this was styled the gospel of God, to distinguish it from the gospel of men, or that which the false teachers taught, and which was called the gospel, though it was not so, and to express the excellency of it from the author of it, who is God, it being the produce of his wisdom and grace, and from the matter of it, it containing the goodwill of God to men, setting forth the grace of God in election, redemption, justification, pardon, adoption, regeneration, and glorification, and expressing things relating to the kingdom of God, a meetness for it, and a right unto it, and it being so called, showed it to be something divine, a message sent from God to sinful men, and gives a reason why the apostles were so bold to speak it, because it was not of men, but of God." The Syriac version renders it the, quote, gospel of Christ, unquote. See Romans chapter 1, verse 16. "And it being so, they were bold to speak it, or they spoke it both with liberty of mind, and the Spirit of God be with them, and with freedom of speech, a door of utterancy being opened for them, as also with great courage and integrity, notwithstanding what they had suffered before, and the ill treatment they had met with at Philippi. And though they knew that the gospel they spoke was contrary to the Jews, was a stumbling block to them, and they had an invertebrate prejudice against it, and was foolishness to the Greeks, was derided by them, and they were sure to meet with reproach and persecution on account of it, yet they boldly and faithfully preached it, fearing not the face of men, nor the reviling though it was, with much contention, referring to the tumult raised by the baser sort, who, instigated by others, assaulted Jason and the brethren, where the apostles were, Acts chapter 18, verse 5, or to the disputes which they had with the unbelieving Jews, who contradicted and blasphemed what they said, and to the division of the gospel made, as through the corruption of nature it makes whatever it comes between the nearest relations and friends, some being for it and others against it, or this may be expressive of the zeal which the apostles preached, who earnestly contended for it, as persons in a combat or agony. They fought the good fight of faith vigilantly. They endured hardness as good soldiers of Christ, and gave not way to the enemy, no, not for an hour. And all this was, quote, in our God, unquote, or, quote, by the confidence, unquote, of our God, as the Syriac version renders it, trusting in him and relying upon him, being assisted by his grace and strengthened by his power, and receiving much encouragement from a view of him as a covenant God, faith in God as a covenant God, will make a man bold in this cause. See Daniel chapter 3, verse 17. Unquote. Reading again from the King James Version, quote, "But even after that we had suffered before, and were shamefully entreated, as ye know, at Philippi. We were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention." Unquote. End of John Gill. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2.